Good day. You're all welcome once again to another session of the Zero Guides, where learning knows no limit. Um, our previous session, we discussed something about anthropology, and then we got to understand what anthropology is, and then we also learned something about some of the subfields and then the emerging fields of anthropology. We said that anthropology has four basic subfields. That is the physical biological anthropology. We have the cultural anthropology, we have the linguistics and anthropology, and then archaeology. Right. Now, this session, now we are also going to learn something about how to make anthropological inquiry. Now, we've seen the kind of anthropology, subfield of anthropology that you want to concentrate on. The question is, how then do you go about to collect data? How then do you go about to make enquiries, to ask respondents or informant for information? What are some of the methodologies that you must use? What are some of the strategies that you must be able to use? These are some of the things that every scientific field or every scientific discipline, has, right? It has a method, it has the subfields and all that. So we are going to learn something about anthropological inquiries, and then we'll get to understand some of the limitations when it comes to anthropological inquiries. We'll know some of the types of anthropological inquiries and how to go about them, know about their basic characteristics, and some of the limitations that comes along with it. But before that, I'd like to remind you to subscribe to the channel if you've not done so, that as time goes on, when new videos are being released, you will be alert and then you can benefit from them. Without wasting much time, we are diving into it. Now, we talk about anthropological inquiry. Now, we are talking about the means, right? The methods through which anthropological data are collected, right? Now, field work is the backbone of anthropology or of anthropological studies, right? That anybody that is interested in anthropology that wants to make an anthropological inquiry, the best thing or the best thing that the person needs to do is engage in field work, right? Is engage in field work. Now, field work simply means that you go to the site, right? You go to whatever's a town that they want to study, then you go and collect the data. But then, in an attempt or in field work, there are a lot of anthropological methods or inquiry methods that could be used on the field work. Right, number one, we have the participant observation, for which it was coined by Branislaw Malinowski. And then under participant observation, you have the active and passive participant observation. We'll get to understand the difference between the active and the passive participant observation. And the next anthropological inquiry method is life history. We also have focus group discussion. We also have case study, and then we also have genealogical studies. And we'll take much time, and then we are going to analyze and then go deeper into these methods of inquiries. We are going to learn about them, know their characteristics, and then how best we can adapt them in our attempt to make anthropological inquiries. First and foremost, let's talk about participant observation. And when we talk about the participant observation is just as the name goes, participant observation, right? Observing or participating while observing. So with that, the researcher or the field worker actually go and live amongst the people, the group that he or she wants to study, live among them, and then do the things that they do, get to understand them, create some sort of good relationship, good rapport with them in order to be able to take the data. Right. So participant observation is a research method in anthropology where the researcher actively engages in the daily lives and activities of the community or group under study. The researcher becomes a participant observer immersing themselves in the culture they are studying to gain an insider's perspective. To gain an insider's perspective. Now, with participant observation, we spoke about active and passive participant observation. Right. We talk about active and passive participant observation. Now, when we talk about the active participant observation, just as it goes active, the field worker or the observer actively participates in the daily activities of the people, engages them, gets to understand them, the reason why they do the things that they do, try to, make them feel that he is part of them, and then try to live. Do not criticize anything or do not criticize their culture. Get to understand them and all that, so that you'll be able to collect enough data. Now, it is said to be that this is one of the most efficient form of collecting a field work data or anthropological data. This is because you get to understand the people well, you create good rapport with the people. So as that, the people will be open enough and then tell you certain things that any other person may not be able to know, because you make the people feel that you understand them. You made them feel some sense of belonging and all that. You understand them and all that. But then with the active participant observation, there is some sort of a disadvantage. Now, because the participant observer would be able to understand the reason why the people do the things that they do, there could be the situation whereby the participant observer or the field worker would be biased in the interpretation of the data that is going to collect. You know that one of the things that makes the results of a research more valid is it being objective, being free of bias and all that. But then with the active participant observation, because the researcher actively partakes in the daily activities of the people, he gets to understand the culture of the people, so which can therefore lead him to be biased in the interpretation of the data. But then the passive participant observation, yes, the observer or the field worker lives among them all right, but then does not actively participate in the daily activities of the people. With that, the researcher, yes, would be free from bias, all right, but then there's that tendency for the researcher of for not getting what the rich and then accurate information from the people, because in that particular sense, the participant observer or the passive participant observer has not created that good rapport with the people that will allow them to open up to him or her. So these are the two main, dichotomies, the two main parts of participant observation, the active and the passive participant observation. Now let's look at some of the key characteristics of participant observation. As I said earlier, participant observation deals with immersion. That is, a researcher spend extended period living and participating in the activities of the community they study. So the researcher lives among them, participates in the activities and all that. Now we also have direct involvement. But the researcher actively takes part in the daily routines, rituals, and interactions of the community, and then also a holistic understanding. This method aims to provide a holistic understanding of the culture by experiencing it firsthand. So these are the key characteristics of participants' observation. First of all, the researcher lives among them. The researcher actively takes part in their daily routines, rituals, and interactions. And then the researcher gets to understand and then experience and get a fair idea and understanding of the culture of the people by having an experiential knowledge of it. Because you get to experience it. So you'll be the best person to write about. What are some of the advantages that comes with participant observation? It allows for an in-depth understanding of social practices, rituals, and everyday life. Because you lived among them, you get an in-depth understanding, right? You get to understand the reason why the people do the things that they do. right? That if anybody that is outside the society is criticizing the society because you have had an experiential knowledge about the cultural practices, the rituals, and then you have partook in the daily activities, the daily life of the people, you would be able to make a value judgment. You would be able to give a good and accurate information because you have had an experiential knowledge about their cultural practices. And then it also facilitates the development of rapport and trust with the community members. So advantage of participants, because you lived among them, they develop some sort of trust and rapport with the community members, and also provides rich and context specific data. As I said, because you lived among them, you have established a right and then a good rapport with the community members. Then they will be able to trust you enough to unveil certain things unto you, to unveil certain information about their background, about the reason why they do the things that they do, and the things that are not overtly known. Right. So these are some of the advantages of participants observation. Let's look at the challenges. There's also the potential bias. This is the researcher's subjectivity, as I said earlier. It's also time consuming and may require long-term commitment. Some of the anthropological studies take up more than a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, even before because you have to learn their languages and all that. Then it will take you a lot of time, a lot of years for you to be able to create a good rapport with the people in order to collect rich and content specific data, and an ethical consideration related to privacy and cultural sensitivity. Right. So there are some of the things that the participants observer, the field worker, because you've gotten some of the knowledge about you just publish them. Maybe there are some of the cultural activities that are sensitive, that are not supposed to be told, but then because of participants observation, you end up have those experiential knowledge. You come, and then one way or the other, you could spill out the beans, and then which in a way would affect the community in a negative way. So these are some of the advantages, key characteristics, and challenges with participant observation. Now let's move on to another anthropological inquiry method. That is life history. Just as the name goes, life history, you're talking about a particular person. So you study, and then you talk to the person in the form of an interview. You collect data for a particular person about the life of the person, right? And then you use that to understand the social context that the person lived. That is all life history is about. So life history is a qualitative research method that involves collecting detailed information about an individual's life, typically through in-depth interviews. It aims to capture the personal experiences, perspective, and social context of the person over time. So with life experiences, because the person lived in the society, and then with the idea of sociological imagination, we get to understand the behavior of the people in context of the society that he or she finds himself in. So with life history, you understand through, or you collect data of from an individual about a particular person through an in-depth interview. Then you try as much as possible to situate that information that you get in the context of the society that the person lived. So that is another way of collecting anthropological data in studying a society through life history. The history about individuals. Sometimes you look at the history about some of the prominent people. For example, when you come to the Ashanti region right now, somebody can even take, the life history, narrate the life history about one of the prominent figures, one of the traditional leaders that has ever lived on the Ashanti continent, the Ashanti kingdom. That the 2 4 right? So the life history about all these things, with that you'll be able to make inferences and know the kind of society that they've lived in. Right? We have Carmen Nkrumah, we have Yasantua, and many more. So the life histories about all these people actually depict the kind of society that they've lived. Okay, and then let's look at some of the characteristics of the life history. And the characteristics is focused on the individual's entire life, including childhood, family, education, work, and other significant events. right? It also emphasizes the subjective experiences and personal narratives, and then often used to understand culture, social, and historical context through the lens of an individual's life, right? Of like we have some of the radio stations, having this life history. A person will come and then give, a good account about his life, his childhood, his education, his social life, all those things. Actually, sociology sees all those things in the context of the kind of culture or the kind of society that the individual lived in. So this is another way of collecting data about, or collecting an anthropological data about a community, collect high history about the individual who has lived in that community before, and then you use that to make inferences about how the community is. So you make inferences in the lens of how the individual sees it, because the individual has experienced whatever that you want to know. He has an experiential knowledge, so it puts him in the best situation to what give you the right information, provided the individual is being sincere and honest. So that is it with life history. Now, another thing is focus group discussion. Focus group discussion. In as much as life history is one-on-one interview, focus group discussion involves three or more people, right? So focus group can be bringing together a small group of participants, typically 6 to 12 people. Some even make it 8 to 12 to discuss a specific topic under the guidance of a facilitator. It is a qualitative method that encourages interaction and group dynamics to generate insights. So you have a group of people, you have a topic on board, right? Then the focus group discussion, you bring it on board. The individual people, the members of the group, they are going to give their ideas about the situation. And then with that, you'll be able to make inferences and understand the kind of social context that they've lived in, right? You get much knowledge about whatever problem, whatever topic that you'll be discussing. So just know that with the focus group discussion, we have what? We have the facilitators and we have the members, or the facilitators and we have participants, right? Characteristics. Group interaction is a key figure, allowing participants to express their views, share experiences, and reach to each other's opinion. And then it's also effective for exploring diverse perspectives in understanding cultural norms, attitudes, and behavior within a community. So, with the life history, one advantage that the focus group discussion has over the life history is that the life history only looks at it from one person's perspective, right? It's just an individual data that you collected. But then with a focus group discussion, a lot of people bring their opposite views, their opposing views, their different views that will be able to what it, at the in the long run, you'll be able to come to a conclusion after weighing all the other alternatives and all the views of the people who lived in that society, right? And then the facilitator guided discussion help uncover shared beliefs, norms, and social dynamics. So with that, based on the things that the individual in the group, the submissions that they are going to give, you get to know whether they had a shared belief and how the shared belief actually affected their behavior and then their beliefs in the society that they've lived in. So this is what focus group discussion is about. So it's also an anthropological method of inquiry. Case study. Case study. This normally happens, right? This normally happens. And a case study is an in-depth analysis of a particular individual, group, event, or situation. It involves a holistic examination of the subject, often using multiple data sources such as interviews, observations, and archival records. Right. So a case study, as I said, is most of exploring a particular problem or maybe relating to an individual, a group event, or a situation. Right. You want to get more knowledge. So it's exploratory in nature. Right. It's exploratory in nature. You want to get more knowledge about a particular thing. Right. So with that, we even use first-hand information and then secondary information, primary information and secondary information. That is through interviews, observation, and then even the use of archival records. Simply because you want to explore, you want to enhance your knowledge about a particular situation. That is what a case study is about. Now, the characteristics of a case study is a comprehensive exploration of the context and details surrounding a specific case. And then a case study is normally a case the researcher has no control over. Right? The researcher has no control over the case. So what you need to do is to do a case study, and then cannot involve a single case, or can involve a single case or multiple cases for comparative analysis. And then the case study also aims to provide a detailed understanding of a phenomenon within its real world context. Within its real world context. There's been a series of case studies. There's been a series of case studies that has actually built up upon the knowledge of scholars and then the knowledge of other disciplines. So case study is exploratory in nature, whereby you do in-depth analysis of a particular individual group event. So it means that a case study could be done on a person, a case study could be done on a group, a case study could be done on a situation, on an event, right? And then with that, you do not have much knowledge, but then you want to explore more about it. That is what a case study is about. All right. Let's look at genealogical studies. Genealogical studies. It is also very, very important. It is very, very important. Now, the genealogical studies try to study the kinship or the kinship relationship and familiar relationship within a community. Right. So the researchers trace family histories, lineages, and kinship structures to understand social organization, inheritance patterns, and the significance of family ties. So with the genealogical studies, remember something like whereby they draw the family tree, right? So with that, you look at the relationship, the kinship ties between people, right? You look at the kinship tie between people and then among communities, and that you also get to know a fair idea and a fair knowledge about the society. We have some societies that are patrilineal in nature, and then we have some societies that are matrilineal in nature. So depending on the kind of society that you find yourself in will determine the kind of a family tree that will be drawn. Because depending on the kinship relationship, that will determine the way that properties are should be shared, right? That will determine the kind of marriage, that will determine the kind of marriage that are allowed and the kind of people that you are not supposed to marry, depending on the kinship style. So it means that relationship and familiar relationship or kinship relationship in the way is very central to the to every community. Is central to every community. That without familiar relationship, without kinship relationship, there wouldn't be any community. There wouldn't be any society. So it is very, very important. So the key characteristics is that we have a family tree construction. So researchers construct family trees or genealogical maps or genealogies to map out relationships among individuals within a community. There's also a kinship analysis. So focus on understanding the social, economic, and cultural implication of kinship ties and structures. So let's look at some of the advantages of genealogical studies. It provides insight into the social organization and structure of the community. As I said earlier, if you know the kinship tie that binds people, that knits people together, then you get a fair idea about the kind of structure that the society operates in. But it also helps understand how kinship influence power dynamics and decision making. As I said, we have a lot of countries, for example, matrilineal societies, right? For example, the Akan, which is matrilineal, determines how power is to be distributed, how inheritance or how properties are to be inherited, right? And then how decisions are to be made. So another advantage is useful for studying inheritance patterns and property distribution, as I have said earlier. So the challenge is to rely heavily on accurate information about familial relationship, which may be challenging to obtain. Right? There could be a situation whereby it will be difficult for you to actually know the relationship between people, right? The familiar relationship, the kinship ties between people, somewhere somehow could be difficult to find. That is a challenge to the genealogical study, and they may not capture the full complexity of social relationship beyond family ties. So the question is, aren't there any other social relationship that goes beyond the family ties? Right? But because the genealogical study actually study the society in the light of the kinship relationship between the individuals in the society, it may not be able to unearth certain relationship that goes beyond the familial relationship. Right? So the interpretation of kinship relationship may vary across cultures. The interpretation of kinship relationship may vary across cultures. Now, challenges associated with fieldwork. Challenges associated with fieldwork. Now, we've spoken about some of the anthropological inquiries, the means, the methods through which you can collect anthropological data or data on the fieldwork. But then, is it that easy for you to just a stranger, you just enter into a community and then you just start collecting data? Now, before you enter into a community, there are the first people, there are some people who are called the gatekeepers that you must seek for their consent. The gatekeepers could be the political leaders of the society, right? The gatekeepers can be the chiefs, can be the queen mothers, right? In the society. Now, the problem with them is that there could be a situation whereby it would be difficult for you to gain access, for you to gain their consent in order for them to allow you to collect the data. This may be because there are some of the information about the community that they are afraid that you may be able to unearth. Some of them, they do that to protect the entire society, right? And then some people do that for their own interest. Maybe there are certain things that they are doing that they think that if the people are to know because of your research that you are coming to carry out in the community, it will actually bring some sort of havoc upon themselves. So they will try as much as possible to resist you and your study. Right? So problem with gatekeepers is one of the things that ethnographers or one of the things that field workers faces. Right? Because they are the leaders of the town, you can't just bypass them and then go ahead and start your study. Sometimes when you go and then they permit you to study, sometimes they themselves even announce and then even tell people to avail themselves for you to what? To be able to collect the data. Another challenge is language barrier. Another challenge is language barrier. Right? You go to a community that speaks a different language as yours, right? A different language as yours, then it will be difficult for you to be able to collect the data because we communicate with one another through languages. If we don't understand the language that the people speak, it will go against you. So it becomes a challenge to field work. So this, however, calls for field workers or calls for anthropologists to study the language of the people of the community that they want to study. And this takes time. This takes time. It takes time. It takes a lot of time for you to understand their language, fully understand their language in order to collect the data. And then also the observer effect, especially something with the participant observation. Right. As I said, that you are observing them all right, but then there could be a situation because the people that you want to study, they are aware that you are observing them, you're observing their every move. There could be a situation whereby the observer effect will set in. The observer effect sets in, or is a situation whereby actors changes their behavior completely because of the presence of an observer. They changes their behavior completely because of the presence of an observer.
That if the observer is to be taken out of the equation, the participant or the person or the actor would have acted in a different way altogether. But because the observer, they are aware that someone is observing them, they try as much as possible to tame and control their behavior, behave in a particular way. This sometimes could be a hindrance to what, to the validity and what, and then the accurateness of, or the accuracy of the fieldwork data that you are going to collect. There's also difficulties in winning the trust of the members. There could also be difficulties in winning the trust of the members. There are some of the members, as soon as you go to the field to go and study them, most of the people will not even come near you because they see you as a spy. Sometimes they will be pointing out at you. Look at the spy, the person coming to, learn more about us and all that. Coming to spy us and then go and report us. So it's sometimes difficult in winning the trust of the members. And then also the idea of cultural bias and ethnocentrism. The idea of cultural bias and ethnocentrism. The tendency for the field worker to be biased, to become ethnocentric, is also a challenge to field work. That if you are biased, it in a way distorts the data that you're going to collect at the field. So these are some of the challenges that is associated with field work. So for now, we've learned something about some of the anthropological inquiry methods. So far, we've learned about participant observation, and we learned that participant observation is in two folds. It could be active or passive participant observation. We also learned something about life history. Right? We learned something about life history, that is trying as much as possible to know the past from the childhood, the stories, the history about a person in order to make inferences about the kind of society that the person lived in. We also learned something about focus group discussion. Right? A situation whereby you have a group of people, normally about 6 to 12 or 8 to 12, and you discuss a particular topic, a particular situation, whereby you get different ideas from different perspectives, from different people on board, and that you are able to know the shared norms and the shared values that existed among the people and the society that they find themselves in. You also learn about genealogical studies, right? Genealogical studies, whereby you study society in the light of the kinship relationship and family ties that exist among the people in the society. Right? That gives you a fair idea about the kind of society that you are in. And then we said that one challenge to that is that there are some relationship goes beyond just familiar ties or just family ties. So because genealogical studies is centered on family or kinship relationship, that tendency for the researcher not to be able to be conscious and know of some of the relationship that goes beyond familiar ties or kinship ties. So we also learned about some of the challenges, right? Some of the challenges to anthropological inquiry, or some of the challenges to field work. And we said that the problems with with gatekeepers is one of the challenges. We also learned about a situation whereby it would be difficult to seek and then earn the trust of the people. We also spoke about language barrier, right? So these are some of the things that concerns with the theory or concerned with the anthropological inquiry. So this brings us to the end of this session. Beloved, please do not forget to subscribe to this channel, as our next video will be on the way soon. Our next video, we are going to talk about some of the founding fathers of the discipline of anthropology, and then some of their theoretical contribution to the discipline. So stay tuned. Do not exit the channel without subscribing. Please kindly subscribe to the channel, as your subscription is much more important as reading or benefiting from the session. Thank you very much. Once again, this is the Zero Guys, where learning knows no limit. Thank you very much. Bye bye.